Deep Rock Galactic is a fantastic game, co-op or solo. I picked up this game on Steam when I saw it recommended to me simply because I thought, dwarves plus sci-fi plus FPS, hell yeah, I couldn't pass it up. I wasn't let down either. I went into the game expecting a chaotic objective-based FPS with a few twists that I can enjoy with myself or others if I wanted to do so, and I got that and more. Yeah, this game has some problems as it is, and I'm not going to gloss over them as though they don't exist. In this video, I'll be going over Deep Rock Galactic, what it does well, the ideas it has, what it could improve on, and what I think it should do, or more so, keep doing moving forward. Now, this is an early access game, and that's how I'm going to treat it, because I don't get the sense this is one of those games that plans on staying that way forever, thank God. I will be giving my personal opinions throughout the video, and I hope anyone watching will as well in the comments. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so let's talk about the characters. As I've said before, Deep Rock Galactic is a dwarven sci-fi first-person shooter with an emphasis on co-op and exploration. And digging. Lots of digging. In fact, there's so much digging, there's a whole character dedicated to digging, in addition to 3 others who are less good at digging, but are equally viable at digging what you need. Unless what you need is to get to the drop pod as fast as possible, because it will leave you, and these caves can be very easy to get lost in. Yeah, in that case, the digger is incredibly useful. He has the potential to save the entire team. There are 2 other characters with this potential to save the team as well, like, for instance, the gunner. This beastly man-dwarf likes big guns that deal lots of damage. When you hear mission control say you've got a swarm coming, you know who else is coming? The rest of the team. They're all going to be running to the gunner. With his not-so-mini minigun, powerful long-range sidearm, and C4 explosives, he can keep the team nice and safe from the infinite hordes of hyper-aggressive bugs. And finally, the gunner has a deployable zipline, which is vital for the team, especially on platform defense missions, where you're required to carry heavy stuff back to the platform. Also, what's with these big gun names that seem to contradict reality? Minigun, light machine gun. Both those are they're not mini, they're not light. Anyway. Next up is the engineer. He plays a very important support role. He has a gun that shoots platforms, which is really useful against the toxic shit that slows you down when you walk in it. And he's also useful to the scout, who has a grappling gun, but we'll talk about the scout later. He's my favorite. But back to the engineer. He has 2 deployable turrets, which have limited ammo that the engineer can replenish. He can also hold Alt to recall them whenever he needs. As well as being able to replenish the ammo on his own turrets, the engineer has the potential to save the team specifically on platform defense missions. Platforms drop in with 4 big turrets with limited ammo that can only be replenished by the engineer. He has an important role in these missions, almost as much as a gunner. With his shotgun and sidearm, he is still viable in combat, though not as much as a gunner or driller. Finally, the scout. I consider the scout to be the most well-rounded and perfect for solo runs. With his grappling hook, he can zip around like a drunk dwarven Spider-Man and die half the time, making him the least popular to non-scout players. With his assault rifle and shotgun, he can take out enemies both from a great distance and right up close. He also has a flare gun, which people underestimate the use of and often forget about. He lastly has this grenade that slows and weakens all enemies in it, without hurting your team or yourself, which is immensely useful, especially against dreadnoughts. We'll talk about those beasties later. With all 4 of these dwarves in your squad, you will have an excellent experience as long as everyone knows what they're doing. Or not, it depends on how you like to play your games. Okay, progression. Let's talk about that. Each of these characters I mentioned previously can be customized and upgraded. I feel as though the upgrades can be expanded upon, and I would personally like to see more cosmetics. Not shitty microtransaction cosmetics, but ones you earn. I would be heartbroken if this game released microtransactions, especially before being released. Look at Halo 3 and Reach. Learn from those. It's too frequent developers overlook the importance of developing an attachment for your character. I don't feel like I care about a character that has a set path for me to go down, or who wears stuff I just bought with real money. I want to earn my cosmetics. I'm super happy you guys are already taking that route. It warms my heart to see a game on the right track. Although it can be a bit time-consuming to get those upgrades, I think it's worth it. Also, as of right now, there's a supporter DLC you can get to get a special icon by your name and some shiny golden armor. I did buy this because I want to support the developers as much as possible. I hope they don't expand on this idea, though. I hope they keep the supporter upgrade as it is. I want it to keep its meaning, which is something you buy because you want to support the game further. I can respect that business model. I don't think the criticism others have given it is justified. But yeah, progression is rather linear as of right now, and I don't think it will be that way in the future. I think it'd be nice for something like a character focusing more on ammo than damage output, or having the option for more defense than speed. Or best yet, better air mobility, or higher jump over something like defense, like Smash Bros. I'm just thinking out loud, okay? You can keep the linear progression in the form it's in now and do something like that. I'd personally love that. It would add a layer of depth and really make me care about my character in a way few games ever really do. Character sandboxes are so underdone in video games, and there's huge potential to stand out here. Alright, up next is gameplay. Now, who cares about what characters you play as if the gameplay isn't fun? Luckily, Deep Rock Galactic is good, clean, pure fun. There's very little bullshit in Deep Rock Galactic, and that's why I love it. Every time I die, it feels like a learning experience. Except for those tentacle monster things that hang from the ceiling. Every time I die by one of those, it's either my fault for wandering alone, the scout's fault for not lighting the ceiling, or everyone else's fault for not being considerate enough to help me down. In addition to that tentacle monster thing, there are an okay variety of enemies right now. Every time I see an enemy in this game, though, I get a little dopamine hit because I'm like, oh yeah, something interesting to shoot, which is a feeling that I don't really experience in most games. But regarding the enemies, there are these little tiny guys that nibble at your little toes in swarms. They pretty much act as shield regen stoppers. There's medium-sized warrior creatures that do more damage but spawn less frequently, although they are still relatively plentiful. There's red glowy spider bugs that explode on you if you aren't paying attention, which can be really easy not to react to because the noise they make before exploding is so unnoticeable. They just blend in with the crowd. Also, there's these huge big green guys with a hard exoskeleton who only take damage from the head and big glowy spot, or die from 1 C4 charge and release a toxic gas upon death. And there's also dreadnoughts, who are the most formidable of the bunch. They have 2 phases and multiple attacks. One of their attacks is they can shoot a massive explosive fireball that does significant damage. Another one is just a standard attack that does so much damage you'll find yourself just running away from him whenever he's after you in an effort to avoid it. The final attack is an AoE, which rocks bust out of the ground after being warned by pebbles floating. I guess this bug has telekinesis, which is kind of scary to think about. After you take out his first phase, he gets mad and becomes even more formidable. This is the phase where he speeds up and wipes out your team effortlessly because your team doesn't expect him to be an Olympic runner after you damage him so much. Still, these scary critters are my favorite enemy to fight. As well as those guys, there are flying bugs with lots of health that tend to spawn in groups, and they spit stuff at you. This tends to do a lot of damage to your shield, and if you aren't paying attention, well, they can take you down without you even knowing. So, if you see a big group of these coming for you, run. Run and call for help. This could be absolutely terrifying. Press X and call attention to yourself, or better yet, hold the control and click on one to spot it for your team, or Bosco. Bosco can be a lifesaver in this situation, and most of the time he's even more responsive than your team. As well as the flying spitters, there are crawling acid spitters. These guys look like red warrior bugs, and they will harass you from a distance. There are also these web-spitting bugs that will hurt you and slow you down significantly. All these spitting bugs should be your top priority in a swarm. They have really good accuracy, so I think it's best, instead of dodging them while shooting at the crowd of crawlers, going the other way around. You can run away from the crawlers pretty easily, but the spitting ones are pretty challenging to avoid. Although sometimes there's just too much and you have no choice but to run away from all of them. That's sometimes the best option. There may be some other enemies that I haven't mentioned, like these massive ones that are rooted in the ground, and they can really ruin your day with their projectiles. And these nests with eyes all over them that spawn these tiny green guys, but that's just because I don't really know what to call them yet. But yeah, you will face these enemies while performing tasks such as exploring caves for specific minerals, mining minerals to help you progress your character, picking flowers and shrooms, killing dreadnoughts, delivering big minerals to big platforms while defending said platforms, or trying to escape to the dropship. Sadly, this isn't a very long list right now, but I'll get to that in a sec. Right now, I want to talk about the guns. I have a problem with the guns right now. The reload animations are they're bad, they're horrendous. I can't tell you how many times it looks like I've reloaded a weapon, but the animation wasn't 100% finished, so the game punishes me by needing to redo the animation all over again. Why can't the assault rifle finish reloading when you hear the final click? Same with pistols, flare guns, shotgun, zipline, all the guns, but please fix this problem, it's terrible. I'll hear the final click and my brain will tell me, okay, good to go, and then I'll switch to my flare gun to light stuff up and reload that weapon, but that one's broken too, so I switch back to my assault rifle in a hurry to kill something that snuck up on me because I didn't know my weapon wasn't reloaded for some bullshit reason. I have to reload and take damage that could potentially down me. Okay. Then after that encounter, I need to light something up, so I switch my flare gun and reload that, but I could have sworn I already did. Well, I should have, but the game's reloading animations are too confusing as of right now, so I guess I didn't. I really, really hope this is fixed as soon as possible because it's a huge problem with the gunplay. Besides that, all the guns are really fun to shoot, they look cool, they sound cool when you shoot them. Some of them may be a little weak, like the driller's sidearm, but I think that's by design. Okay, I'm done with that rant. Mission objectives. There aren't very many, but I think that's just part of being an early access game. I know they can be really creative with these objectives because they made a freaking dwarven sci-fi game, but time will tell. The process of completing these objectives is still very fun. This game has a stellar gameplay loop that has kept me playing for quite a while now. There was one moment I was exploring a cave with my team, and we were all running around in circles trying to find the next section of the cave. And eventually, I got the idea to use my scanner, which is something I never really use, and I found the next segment of the cave and just dug through it. After scouting ahead for just a sec, as I was the scout after all, I pointed out the cave entrance to the team. And that's a moment I'll probably never forget because it was the first time a team actually benefited from me joining. Co-op-based games hold a special place in my heart, even playing them in single player. I have invested a gargantuan amount of time in one game made by Arrowhead Studios called Helldivers. Still now, this is one of my favorite games of all time. The reason I mention this game is, despite being so different, these two titles actually have a lot in common. Both are shooters, yeah. Both have unique art styles. Both offer objective-based gameplay. In both games, you have to escape to a dropship in the end. And both games feature procedural generation. But mostly, both are co-op-based games that offer unique experiences to solo players, which I feel are amongst the most oppressed gamers right now, but that's besides the point. As a solo player, this game makes me very, very happy. While the solo gameplay isn't necessarily as challenging as Helldivers, though it really can get pretty close, the developers were considerate enough to add a cute little robot named Bosco, which is a fantastic name, especially for a game of the dwarven variety. Now you may be asking, what's so great about a stupid little robot? Well, this isn't just any stupid little robot, this is the most useful companion in any game I've ever played. I feel like the amount of times this adorable killing machine has saved my life has had me grow attached to the little guy. And to be clear, he doesn't just go around doing what he wants, he does all the jobs you don't want to do. You know how escort missions are the most universally hated missions in games? Well, he does that for the entirety of his existence. If you die, his mission fails. It's over. It's in his best interest to keep you alive. He'll even revive you up to 3 times if you go down. But what makes him so cool isn't that he's dedicated to following you around, it's that he will put aside his mission to do whatever you want him to do. You have this little device when you hold control that allows you to point and click whatever you want him to prioritize. So if there's an enemy harassing you from a distance, and you don't want to deal with it, just point and click and Bosco's on the job. Can't reach a vein of ore? Bosco can. This little drone is a god. Well, except when you command him to kill one of those nests, he just has a brain fart and I guess he just doesn't know how to shoot them yet. Some might say he's overpowered, but whenever you're in the explosive cavity of an extreme difficult subterrane, or you're experiencing a little bit of a dip in action where he can keep you from feeling alone or bored, I'm sure you won't be saying that then. I really hope Ghost Ship will one day acknowledge how much us solo players love Bosco and improve on him, or maybe even make him customizable with little hats or something. That would just be excellent fan service, I think. But I think that's enough of Bosco for now. Let's move on. The Mule. Yes, let's move on to the Mule. M-U-L-E. I'm pretty sure that's an acronym for something, but I just have no idea what it could be. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Sometimes the dwarves call it Molly. She's a four-legged robot that can climb up walls, and you use her to insert the ores you mine into. You can press C to call her, but most of the time she just does her own thing. Yeah, she's not the brightest. In fact, she can be so annoying waiting around for her to come to you isn't exactly an option. Sometimes it's best to seek her out. She's very annoying to work with, but she's absolutely vital to the mission, I guess. She has a seemingly endless amount of space in her for you to fit your minerals into. At the end of each mission, she'll need to be delivered to the dropship. You don't need to escort her, though. She kinda just does her own thing and leaves a handy path of light beacons to guide you back to the dropship. I do think it would add a layer of chaos and fear and just an extra element of entertainment if she could be damaged enough to need to be repaired, but at the same time, I feel like a lot is on the line in that case. If you miss that dropship, you could lose 30 minutes or even an hour's worth of work. Maybe if this were to be implemented, she could repair herself, though not as quickly as, say, the engineer could. I do think her AI needs a bit of work. I do like her as a concept very much, though. Every time I play engineer, I try to put a turret on her, but I can't, and I slowly begin to not feel so good. But moving on to the hub. The hub is the wonderful place you dwell in between games, where you can upgrade your gear, change your character's appearance, screw around in, and explore. The developers put a lot of time into this area. You could knock barrels into the launch zone, and get yelled at by mission control, throw a party, see your accomplishments, disable gravity, and find little Easter eggs. This is one of my favorite hubs in any game. You can even get a good view of the planet you're orbiting, which I loved in Helldivers and I still love here. You feel like you're on a spaceship run by dwarfs. I love how much time the developers put into it, and still plan on putting into it. I noticed in the hub right outside the player's dwelling area there are 4 terminals, but one of them has no use. I'm excited to see what will be implemented here in the future. Hopefully it will be used to further progress your character in some interesting way. I really hope the developers wow me with this, because so far, the rest of the game certainly has. One of the 3 terminals is a mineral trading station, which I really like. You can buy and sell minerals here, so if you have too little or too much of one mineral, you can make a deal. It adds an interesting element of decision-making between missions. Though if you ask me, I suggest you really think about the long term here. There have been moments where decisions I've made in the past were nice at the time, but hurt me later on. The hub also has a server browsing terminal and a mission select terminal by the drop pod. Here you can select what environment you'd like to go to and view what minerals they have. You can also up the difficulty if you'd like, which gives you a % bonus at the end. On extreme difficulty, you can get double XP. I usually don't have too much trouble soloing these because in solo mode you get a boost to damage and of course Bosco. If you fully utilize Bosco and carefully pick when you want to use your ammo, you can have yourself a fun challenge. There is just one type of mission I can never complete solo. The one where you need to kill 3 dreadnoughts. I can never pull it off very well. I usually just cheese it by having Bosco shower them with bullets while they run around in circles. In Phase 2 of the Dreadnoughts, this can be incredibly challenging. I suggest just avoiding these missions right now if you're playing alone, because you might just end up dying a bunch and wasting your time. In a group, these missions are a blast though. All the chaos these Dreadnoughts cause can be really fun. That's why they're still my favorite enemy, just not when I'm alone. Bugs! Okay. I've saved the best for last, the bugs. No, not the enemies, the actual bugs of the game. During my time playing, I've found quite a bit of them, but that's to be expected from a game in early access. I'm still going to list them, though. Surprisingly, the procedural generation was very solid and never felt procedural at all. I never came upon a glitch in the environments. That's just fantastic to me. The bugs are few and far between, but there's one that can be consistent in the right scenario. When two players go down and they merge together, like they clip into each other, they're impossible to revive, no matter how much you try. This has happened to me a couple times, actually. The only way to let the down players play again is to restart the map or get them to quit and join back in. Luckily, they don't lose anything by doing that. There's another bug where if you're depositing minerals and the tentacle monster grabs you when you let go, you'll have an extra set of arms perpetually in the depositing minerals animation. From what I know, depositing more minerals into the mule will fix this. Also, sometimes when you jump or you're in the air for some reason and you land, your gun will be stuck in the falling animation and you can't seem to shoot. I found the best fix for this is just to jump again. It's pretty simple. Sometimes the mule will fit through the tiniest holes in the cave, as well as enemies. Spitting enemies can spit behind themselves, which can be really strange to experience and even worse to get downed from. Spitting enemies can often spit through terrain as well, but not all the time, so it's really inconsistent and hard to account for. Weapons reloading animations I've already discussed. They are incredibly misleading, and if you're playing solo and are hesitant for whatever reason to leave the drop pod in the beginning, it can travel all the way back up with you inside and after a little bit disappear, leaving you to fall to your death, unless you're a scout like I was. The driller's flamethrower will sometimes look as though the flames aren't appearing, but it still seems to do damage. The mule has a really hard time following orders, especially in co-op, but it still happens in single player. She just does whatever she wants, really. Anyway, that's all the bugs I can think of. Overall, I think Deep Rock Galactic is exactly the game I was looking for. After hundreds of hours of Helldivers, achieving max rank almost twice now, I was looking for a game with a similar structure, and I got it. Deep Rock has so much potential for being something even more greater than it already is. I just really hope Ghost Ship sticks to what makes their game so great and don't lose sight of it. It seems to me they really do care about making a good game, which is terribly scarce in 2018, sadly. Most games nowadays are driven by greed and bad business. All these big companies like EA and Activision are frankly plaguing the gaming industry, and I think it's developers like Ghost Ship that can keep it alive. When I see an interesting game, I usually refuse to buy it because they treat their fans like garbage with wallets. Microtransactions, RNG, loot boxes, locked on-disc DLC, I could go on. Big business is filled with sociopaths, and it's killing the games I once loved. It's hurting people who are easily suggestible, and it breaks my heart to know my hobby is responsible for that. To me, Deep Rock is a small step in the right direction, and I can't wait to see what comes of this game. Deep Rock Galactic is being made by people who listen to their community and try to build a game we can all enjoy without the lingering thoughts of cut corners and abused or forgotten consumers. A trait few games have now. It's rare we have a game as pure as this, and I think everyone should do themselves a favor and pick this game up and enjoy it. I think it'll only get better going forward, and I'm very optimistic about Deep Rock Galactic's future. I'd love to hear you viewers' thoughts in the comments. Am I giving this game too much credit? Do you think other game devs should follow in Deep Rock's footsteps? This is my very first video on YouTube, and I'd like to know what you thought of it. I hope you found this video informative and entertaining. I had a blast making it. Peace out.